Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. Jack Davis had never believed in fate. A practical man, focused on his law studies and living paycheck to paycheck, he never imagined his life would change in an instant. But here he was, standing at the baggage claim of a busy airport, waiting for a suitcase he was convinced would change his day and possibly his life. The mistake happened in the rush. With a glance at his phone, Jack grabbed a black suitcase that seemed to match his own until he reached his hotel room. It wasn't his. The suitcase was filled with items he could never have imagined. A beautiful leather-bound journal, old photographs, and a few personal letters, the most prominent being a note written by a woman's late grandfather, who had left behind a mysterious fortune and a challenge for his granddaughter. Jack sat on the bed, flipping through the pages of the journal. The woman in the photos, Sophia, was someone he'd never met, but something about her story gripped him. It wasn't just the contents of the suitcase that caught Jack's attention. It was the personal items, the family legacy, the sense of longing in the journal. He had no idea who she was, but he felt an odd pull to return what wasn't his. It was then that he made up his mind. He needed to find her, and somehow he felt this would lead him to something more than just a suitcase. This would lead him to answers he didn't know he was seeking. Jack searched online and found Sophia's details easily enough. She was an heiress to a well-known fortune, her family having been among the city's most influential for generations. But despite her wealth, Sophia lived in the shadow of her grandfather's empire, unable to connect with the legacy he had left behind. Something about her felt trapped, and Jack felt compelled to help her, though he had no idea how. The next day, Jack was on a mission. He contacted her, and soon they arranged to meet at a quiet cafe, a neutral ground where he could return the suitcase and learn more about the woman behind the story. He was nervous, unsure of how she'd react to this strange man showing up with her personal belongings. But when he saw her walk in, he was immediately struck by the air of sadness she carried with her. Sophia was stunning in a simple black dress, but there was an undeniable heaviness in her eyes, as if the weight of her family's legacy and her own loneliness were taking their toll. Jack stood up, offering her the suitcase. She looked at it with a mix of surprise and confusion before she gently took it from his hands. "Thank you," she said, her voice soft but guarded. "I thought I'd never see this again. I've been looking for it everywhere." Jack nodded, feeling a strange connection he couldn't explain. "I wasn't sure how to return it, but I guess fate has its ways of working things out." Sophia smiled faintly, her eyes softening. "It's not just a suitcase. It's a piece of my past that I've been running from for too long." Jack was intrigued. "What's in it? It seems important," Sophia sighed, taking a seat opposite him. "It's everything my grandfather left behind for me. But the one thing he wanted was for me to find someone who could understand it, someone who could help me figure out how to move forward." Jack had no idea what she meant, but he could see that Sophia was a woman caught between her family's expectations and her own desires. He couldn't help but wonder how he fit into all this, but something about the situation felt bigger than just returning a suitcase. He was already too involved to back out now. "What are you asking me?" Jack ventured, his voice tinged with uncertainty. Sophia leaned forward, her voice dropping lower. I need someone to help me find the truth. I know it's in there, and I can't do it alone. Would you, would you help me? Jack looked at her, the weight of her words settling into his chest. He wasn't sure what he was getting into, but he knew he couldn't walk away. This wasn't just about a suitcase anymore, it was about her and the journey she needed to take, and maybe, just maybe, the journey he needed too. After a few moments of silence, Jack took a deep breath, his thoughts racing. Sophia was sitting across from him, the suitcase still in her hands, her fingers gently brushing over the leather as if it held all the answers to questions she had been asking for years. Jack couldn't help but notice the sadness in her eyes, the weight of something she had been carrying for far too long. He cleared his throat, feeling the tension in the air. This was no longer just about returning a suitcase. It was about a story, a mystery, a life he never expected to be a part of. You said your grandfather wanted you to find someone who could understand all of this. But what does it mean? Jack asked, his voice soft, almost hesitant. Sophia looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of relief and uncertainty. It's not just about the fortune, she said quietly. He wanted me to understand what really matters. Family, connection. It's a legacy, but it's also a test. Jack nodded slowly, unsure of what to say next. He wasn't sure if he was ready for this kind of responsibility, but something deep inside told him that he couldn't walk away. He had already stepped too far into this journey, and he wasn't about to turn back now. Sophia hesitated before speaking again, her voice shaky. I don't even know where to begin, she admitted, glancing down at the suitcase. He was always so cryptic with me. He left this behind, and now I have to figure it out. But I can't do it alone. Jack leaned forward, his curiosity growing. So, what's in the suitcase? What's the test he left for you? Sophia opened the suitcase, her fingers trembling as she pulled out a thick stack of letters and photographs. These are his letters to me. They're not just random notes. They're messages, instructions. He wanted me to find a way to carry on his legacy, but I don't know how. Jack watched her closely, the weight of the moment settling in. He could see the depth of her struggle, the fear of failing her grandfather, the pressure of living up to expectations she had never asked for. It reminded him of his own life, the pressures he had faced to follow a certain path, to be something he didn't know if he was. Maybe it's not about finding the answers immediately, Jack suggested, his voice calm but steady. Maybe it's about taking the first step, whatever that might be. Sophia looked at him, her gaze softening. You really think so? She asked, a hint of hope in her voice. Jack nodded, feeling an unexpected surge of confidence. I do. Sophia smiled faintly, and for the first time in their meeting, the tension in the room seemed to ease, if only slightly. You're right, she said. Maybe I've been trying to figure it all out on my own for too long, she sighed, looking at the photographs spread out in front of her. But it's hard. I don't know what he meant by all of this. Jack looked at the photos, seeing the faces of a family he didn't know, a family that Sophia had been trying to connect with. Maybe you don't need to know everything at once, Jack said thoughtfully. You have people who care about you. You have a story to share, and that's the beginning. You don't have to do it alone. Sophia seemed to do it. Relax. A small sigh escaping her lips. For a moment, the world outside the cafe seemed to fade away, and all that mattered was the quiet connection between the two of them. Jack had come here to return a suitcase, but now he was beginning to feel like he was a part of something much larger. Sophia's struggle had become his own, and he couldn't help but want to help her find her way. He knew he wasn't the perfect person for the job, but at this moment, He wasn't sure anyone else would be either. The next few days passed in a blur. Jack and Sophia spent hours together, combing through the letters, trying to decipher the cryptic messages left by her grandfather. The more they uncovered, the more Jack realized how little he knew about the world Sophia came from. Her family was wealthy, influential, and full of secrets, but Sophia was different. She didn't want the fortune, the status, or the power that came with her name. All she wanted was to find a way to live her life on her own terms, without being weighed down by the expectations of others. As they continued working together, Jack began to see a side of Sophia he hadn't expected. She wasn't just the wealthy heir of a family empire. She was a woman trying to find her own place in the world, someone who felt disconnected from the very legacy she was supposed to uphold. And Jack, despite his own fears and doubts, began to realize that he might be the one person who could help her find her way. What had started as an accidental meeting, an exchange of a suitcase, was beginning to feel like destiny. But as their bond deepened, Jack began to question his own motives. Was he helping Sophia because he cared about her? Or was he just trying to escape his own loneliness and uncertainty? It was a question he didn't have an answer to yet, but one thing was certain: he couldn't walk away from this now. He was in it too deep, and maybe, just maybe, that was exactly where he was meant to be. Days passed, and Jack and Sophia continued to dive deeper into the mystery of her grandfather's legacy. Every letter they uncovered, every photograph they studied, seemed to bring them closer to a truth that neither of them fully understood. The more Jack learned about Sophia's family, the more he realized how much he didn't know about her. The family that had once seemed so polished and perfect, with its wealth and power, was full of secrets and struggles. And Sophia was the one who had to carry all of it, all alone. It was a quiet Tuesday evening, when Sophia invited Jack to her family's estate for the first time. She'd told him about the gala that was coming up, a grand event where her family would gather to celebrate their legacy, their wealth, and everything that came with it. "You don't have to come," she had said, her voice low, almost unsure. "But I need someone there, someone who isn't part of all of this, someone who can remind me of what's real." Jack had agreed, though he wasn't sure what he was getting himself into. He didn't belong at a gala like this. He wasn't wealthy, and he certainly wasn't part of her world. But for Sophia, he would go. The evening of the gala arrived, and Jack found himself standing at the grand entrance of her family's mansion, the towering columns and polished marble floors making him feel smaller than ever. He was nervous, unsure of what to expect or how he would fit in with the people who belonged here. As he stepped into the ballroom, the atmosphere was immediately overwhelming. The room was filled with people dressed in expensive tuxedos and gowns, laughing and chatting as if the weight of the world didn't rest on their shoulders. Sophia appeared beside him, looking stunning in a silver gown that shimmered under the chandeliers. Her presence commanded attention, but there was something in her eyes, something he recognized. She was still carrying the weight of everything, trying to hold it all together for appearances. "You look beautiful," Jack said softly, his voice genuine. Sophia smiled faintly, her gaze flickering toward the crowd. "I don't feel beautiful tonight," she admitted, the vulnerability in her voice surprising him. As they moved through the crowd, Sophia introduced Jack to her family and friends. The more Jack saw of her world, the more he realized how much she had to endure. Her family was kind, but distant, almost robotic in their interactions. They didn't seem to notice the strain in her voice, the sadness in her eyes. They were too wrapped up in their own lives, their own successes. Jack couldn't help but feel a deep sympathy for her. She didn't belong here, not really. She didn't want this life. Later in the evening, as the music played and the guests mingled, Jack found himself standing alone on the balcony. The night air was cool, and the city lights sparkled in the distance. He had always been a quiet man, someone who didn't mind being alone. But now, with all the events of the past few days weighing on him, he found himself questioning everything. Was he really helping Sophia, or was he just trying to escape his own loneliness? Did he care for her, or was he simply caught up in the whirlwind of her family's drama? As he stood there, lost in thought, he heard a soft voice behind him. "Are you okay?" Sophia's voice was gentle, almost hesitant. He turned to face her, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. The connection between them had deepened in ways neither could have predicted. Jack wasn't sure when it had happened, but he found himself caring for her in a way that went beyond friendship. It wasn't just about helping her with her grandfather's legacy anymore. It was about her, Sophia, the woman he had come to admire for her strength and her vulnerability. Sophia stepped closer, her eyes searching his face for something, as if trying to read his thoughts. "I'm sorry you had to see all of this," she said quietly. "I know, it's not easy." Jack shook his head. "It's not just about this," he said, his voice steady but full of emotion. "It's about you. And I don't know why, but I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." For a long moment, they stood there in silence, the weight of their words hanging in the air. Jack had meant what he said. He was no longer just a man trying to return a suitcase. He had found something in Sophia that he couldn't ignore. A spark, a connection, a reason to stay. And maybe, just maybe, she had found the same in him. As the evening wore on, the gala continued inside. But Jack and Sophia stayed on the balcony, talking quietly, sharing their fears and dreams. Jack realized that despite the vast differences in their worlds, they understood each other more than anyone else ever could. For the first time, he felt like he truly belonged somewhere. And it wasn't in the mansion or the ballroom, it was here, with Sophia. In this quiet moment, between two people who had found each other in the most unexpected of ways. But the night wasn't over, and as much as Jack wanted to hold on to this moment, he knew there were still challenges ahead. Sophia's family, her legacy, and the mysteries of her grandfather's past, all of these things were still looming over them. But Jack was no longer afraid. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The days following the gala were a whirlwind for Jack and Sophia. They spent more time together, poring over the letters and photographs, each one uncovering more of the mysterious legacy left by Sophia's grandfather. As they decoded the clues, a deeper understanding of the man's intentions began to emerge. It wasn't just about wealth or status, it was about family, about connection, and about creating something lasting, something meaningful. But as they dug deeper, the pressure of the situation started to take its toll. Jack could see the strain in Sophia's eyes. She was no longer just a woman trying to fulfill her grandfather's wishes. She was beginning to question everything about her life. The facade of her family, the mansion, the wealth, it all started to feel like a prison she couldn't escape from. One evening, after a long day of research, Jack and Sophia found themselves sitting in her study, surrounded by piles of letters and notes. The weight of it all was overwhelming, but Jack could see how badly Sophia needed a break from it. She had become consumed by the task of honoring her grandfather's legacy, and it was slowly breaking her. "Maybe we should take a step back," Jack suggested, his voice soft. "You've been at this for days. You need to rest, to think. We don't have to solve everything right now." Sophia looked up at him, her eyes tired but grateful. "I don't know if I can," she said quietly. It's all I've been thinking about. What if I fail him? What if I can't do it? Jack reached across the table, gently taking her hand in his. You're not alone in this, Sophia. You have me, and we'll figure it out together. You don't have to carry this on your own. Sophia squeezed his hand, a tear slipping down her cheek. It was the first time she had allowed herself to show any vulnerability, and Jack's heart ached for her. He could see the burden she carried, the weight of expectations, the fear of failure, and the loneliness that came with being in a family that didn't understand her. For the first time, Jack realized how much she needed him, not just for the task at hand, but for the emotional support she had never allowed herself to seek. He leaned forward, wiping the tear from her cheek gently. I'm not going anywhere, Sophia. I promise you that. Over the next few weeks, their bond grew even stronger. Jack and Sophia took breaks from the research, spending time together in quieter moments, walking through the gardens, having coffee at her favorite café, or simply talking about their pasts. Jack began to see a side of Sophia he had never noticed before. She was more than just a wealthy heiress. She was kind, intelligent, and deeply compassionate. She had a passion for art, something she had never been able to pursue due to her family's expectations. As they talked, Jack encouraged her to start painting again, to rediscover the passion she had once had for creating. It was a small step, but it was enough to reignite a spark in Sophia that she had long since buried. It wasn't long before Sophia started painting again, creating small pieces that were filled with emotion and color. Jack watched in awe as she poured herself into her art, her walls slowly coming down as she embraced this part of herself she had long ignored. She began to smile more, laugh more, and for the first time in a long time, Jack saw the woman he had come to care for deeply. But, despite the progress they were making, Sophia knew that the real challenge lay ahead. Her family would never accept her pursuing a life outside the expectations they had set for her. She would have to choose between following her heart or following the path laid out for her by her family. One afternoon, as they sat in her studio, Sophia turned to Jack, a serious expression on her face. I don't know if I can keep doing this, she said, her voice trembling slightly. I love painting. I love what I'm doing now, but I don't know how to walk away from everything I've known. I don't know how to let go of my family's legacy, even if it's suffocating me. Jack looked at her, his heart heavy with understanding. Sophia, you don't have to choose between your family and your dreams. You can have both. It's going to be hard, but you have to make the choice that's right for you. You deserve to live a life that makes you happy, not one that others expect of you. Sophia took a deep breath, her gaze drifting to the canvas in front of her. I don't know if I'm strong enough to do that, she admitted quietly. Jack stood up and walked over to her, gently placing his hand on her shoulder. I'll be right here, he said softly. Whatever you decide, I'm with you. That night, as they sat on the balcony, looking out over the city, Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of peace. The journey they had started on, one that began with a simple mistake of grabbing the wrong suitcase, had turned into something much more. He had come into Sophia's life to help her solve a mystery, but along the way, he had discovered a love for her that he hadn't expected. And now, as they faced the biggest decision of Sophia's life, he knew that no matter what happened, they would figure it out together. Jack had come to realize that he was no longer just helping her with her grandfather's legacy. He was helping her reclaim her own legacy, the one she had always deserved to have. As the days passed, Sophia's internal struggle continued to weigh heavily on her. She had made progress with her painting, and for the first time in years, She felt a sense of freedom. But that freedom came with its own set of challenges. Her family was still pressing her to take her rightful place within their legacy, and the thought of disappointing them felt like an insurmountable burden. Jack could see the conflict in her eyes every time the subject came up, and he knew she was torn between two worlds, the one she had always known and the one she was only just beginning to build for herself. One evening, as they sat in her study, surrounded by sketches and unfinished canvases, Jack could sense that something was different. Sophia had been unusually quiet, her eyes focused on a painting she had been working on for the past few days. It was beautiful, filled with vibrant colors and raw emotion, but Jack knew it wasn't just the canvas she was struggling with. It was everything: the expectations of her family, the weight of her grandfather's legacy, and the fear of what might happen if she chose her own path. "You're quiet tonight," Jack said softly, breaking the silence. "What's going on?" Sophia put down her paintbrush and sighed, her shoulders slumping with exhaustion. "I'm not sure I can do this, Jack," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want to pursue my art. I want to live a life that makes me happy. But I don't know if I can walk away from everything my family has built. They'll never understand." Jack stood up and walked over to her, placing a hand on her shoulder. He could see how much this was tearing her apart. He had watched her grow stronger with each passing day, but now he saw her vulnerability laid bare. "Sophia, you have to choose what's right for you," Jack said gently. "Your family may not understand, but this is your life. You're not their puppet, and you don't have to live for their approval." Sophia looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of gratitude and fear. "I wish it were that simple," she said softly. "They've always expected me to follow in their footsteps. I've never had a choice. But now, I have this chance to create something of my own. I'm just scared of what will happen if I take it. What if I lose everything? What if I disappoint them forever?" Jack knelt down in front of her, meeting her gaze with a steady, reassuring look. "You won't lose everything, Sophia. You're not alone in this. You've got me. And together, we'll figure this out. No matter what happens, I believe in you." Sophia's breath caught in her throat as she looked at him, her heart pounding in her chest. She had never allowed herself to be this vulnerable with anyone, but with Jack, it felt different. She didn't have to pretend to be strong, didn't have to hide her fears. She could be herself, the person she had always wanted to be. "Thank you, Jack," she whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't know what I would do without you." Jack smiled softly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You don't have to worry about that. I'm not going anywhere." The next day, Jack and Sophia decided to take a break from the pressure of her family's expectations and spend the day together. They took a walk through the nearby park, enjoying the fresh air and the peaceful surroundings. As they walked, Jack couldn't help but feel a sense of calm settle over him. The weight of the world seemed to melt away, and for the first time in a long time, he felt like everything was exactly where it was supposed to be. Sophia was finally finding herself again, and he was here to help her every step of the way. Later that afternoon, they returned to Sophia's family estate, where she received a call from her mother. The tension in the air was palpable as Sophia listened to her mother's words. "Sophia, when are you going to stop with this nonsense and take your rightful place in the family? This art business is a phase, and we both know it. You can't escape your responsibilities forever." As Sophia hung up the phone, she looked at Jack, her eyes filled with frustration and uncertainty. "I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this, Jack," she confessed. "Every time I try to break free, they pull me back in. I feel like I'm suffocating. Jack took her hand in his grip firm and steady. Sophia, you don't have to do this alone. You don't have to give up your dreams for anyone. You're strong, and you've got the power to change your life. If you want to follow your heart, I'll be right here with you. Sophia looked at him, her heart swelling with emotion. She had never felt so sure of anything in her life. For the first time, she realized that she had the strength to make her own decisions, to carve her own path. It wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to happen overnight, but with Jack by her side, she knew she could do it. She wasn't just going to live up to her family's expectations anymore, she was going to live for herself. As the days turned into weeks, Jack and Sophia's bond only grew stronger. They continued to work together on her art, and with each passing day, Sophia's confidence grew. She started to show her work in local galleries, and the feedback she received was overwhelming. People admired her unique style, the raw emotion she poured into every piece. Slowly but surely, she was building a new life, one that was all her own. But the road ahead was still uncertain. Sophia's family continued to pressure her, and she knew that the ultimate test was yet to come. But as she looked at Jack, standing by her side through it all, she knew one thing for sure: she was no longer afraid. The future was hers to create. Weeks passed, and Sophia continued to gain confidence in her art, but her family's pressure never stopped. Her mother, in particular, insisted that she return to the family business and abandon the path she was forging. Despite the growing success of her artwork, every call, every letter from her family felt like a reminder of the life they expected her to live. Jack could see how much it was weighing on her. She was torn between the life she had always known and the one she was beginning to build with him. But every time she picked up her paintbrush, Jack saw the spark of independence in her eyes, the same spark that had drawn him to her from the start. One afternoon, after finishing her latest painting, Sophia sat down beside Jack on the couch, staring at the canvas with a deep sense of satisfaction. "This one feels different," she said quietly, running her fingers through her hair. "For the first time, I feel like I'm finally doing something that's truly mine, but I still can't shake the feeling that I'm disappointing everyone." Jack looked at her, his expression soft but firm. "You're not disappointing anyone, Sophia. You're finding yourself, and the people who matter will see that." Sophia turned to him, her eyes filled with doubt. "You don't know my family, Jack. They don't care about what makes me happy. They care about power, control, and legacy. Every day I live outside of their expectations, I feel like I'm losing them. And the more I pull away, the more they push." Jack gently took her hand in his. "You don't have to lose them, but you can't lose yourself either. You can be part of the family and still live your own life. You have to show them that you can have both." Sophia sighed, leaning back into the couch, her eyes staring out the window. "It's hard. I feel like I'm in the middle of a tug of war. I want to be free, but I don't want to alienate them forever. And what if I'm wrong? What if this dream of mine falls apart?" Jack stood up and walked over to her, kneeling down in front of her. He took her face in his hands, lifting her chin so their eyes met. "You're not alone in this, Sophia. No matter what happens, you have me. I believe in you, and I believe in your art. You've already built something beautiful, something real." Sophia felt the warmth of his words settle in her chest. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to believe in the possibility of a future that didn't rely on anyone else's approval. "Thank you, Jack," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "I don't know how to express what this means to me." Jack smiled softly, brushing a lock of hair from her forehead. You don't have to. I'm here for you, no matter what. As the days went by, Sophia began to focus even more on her art, letting go of the weight of her family's expectations. She continued to show her work in local galleries, and the response was incredible. People were drawn to her unique perspective, her raw emotion, and the authenticity that radiated from every piece. She was starting to gain recognition, and Jack was there, supporting her every step of the way. However, despite her success in the art world, Sophia knew the real test was yet to come. Her family would never truly accept her new life, and soon she would have to face them head-on. The upcoming family gathering was inevitable, and Sophia knew that it would be the moment of truth. Her mother had insisted on her attendance, reminding her that it was time to reconnect with the family and take her place in the business. The night of the gathering arrived, and Jack went with Sophia to her family's mansion. As they entered, the familiar feeling of suffocation hit her. The grand chandelier above, the marble floors, the carefully curated portraits of her ancestors, it all felt like a world that no longer belonged to her. Jack squeezed her hand gently as they walked into the opulent dining room. Her mother stood by the fireplace, waiting with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Sophia's mother, a woman of control and poise, looked her up and down before speaking. "I'm glad you decided to join us, Sophia. It's time you remembered who you are. You belong here, with us." Sophia's heart raced as she exchanged a glance with Jack, who gave her a reassuring smile. "I know where I belong," Sophia said, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. "But who I am, that's something I have to find on my own." Her mother's smile faltered, and for a moment, there was silence. The tension in the room was palpable, but Sophia stood firm. Jack could feel her strength, the same strength he had seen in her from the very beginning. This wasn't just about the art anymore. This was about Sophia reclaiming her life, her identity, and her future. Sophia turned to Jack, her voice soft but resolute. "I've made my choice," she said, her eyes never leaving his, "and I know what I have to do. I'm ready." Jack smiled, his heart swelling with pride. Together, they walked out of the mansion, leaving behind the world that had once tried to define her. They walked into the future, hand in hand, knowing that whatever came next, they would face it together. As they stepped outside into the cool night air, Sophia took a deep breath, the weight of the past lifting off her shoulders. She was free to live the life she had always dreamed of, free to love who she wanted, and free to create her own legacy. With Jack by her side, Sophia knew that she had found the courage to truly live for herself. As the days turned into weeks, Sophia's decision to leave her family's expectations behind began to feel more real, but not without its struggles. The road was not an easy one, and the pressure from her family never ceased. Her mother, still persistent in her efforts to pull Sophia back into the family business, made multiple calls, trying to convince her that she was throwing away a future that had been laid out for her. But this time, Sophia stood her ground, no longer afraid to live her own truth. It was hard, especially when she felt the weight of her mother's disappointment. Still, she knew deep down that she couldn't go back to a life of pretense. She had to live for herself, and she wasn't alone. Jack was right there with her, every step of the way. One evening, as they sat in the small cafe they had come to love, Jack looked at Sophia across the table, his expression soft but serious. "Sophia, I know how hard this is for you," he said, his voice gentle. "But you've made it this far, and you're doing something incredible. Your art, your work, it's powerful. Don't let anyone make you doubt that." Sophia smiled, a small but genuine smile, grateful for the man who had been by her side through it all. "I know," she replied quietly, "but it's still so hard, Jack. I've spent my whole life trying to be what they wanted, and now I'm trying to be something completely different. What if it's not enough? What if I fail?" Jack reached out and took her hand in his, squeezing it reassuringly. "You're not failing, Sophia. You're living your life. You're not bound by their expectations anymore. You're finding your own path, and that's the most important thing." Her heart swelled at his words. For the first time in years, she felt like she was truly seen, like she wasn't just the heir to a fortune, but a woman with dreams, desires, and a future of her own making. And Jack had become a part of that future. They had faced the storm together, and now, for the first time, she could breathe freely. "I just wish they could understand," Sophia murmured, looking down at their intertwined hands. "I wish they could see that this isn't about rejecting them. It's about embracing who I really am." Jack smiled, his eyes filled with compassion. "They will. Maybe not right away, but they will see how happy you are. You don't have to prove anything to them anymore. You're not doing this for them. You're doing this for you." As the weeks passed, Sophia's confidence grew. She poured herself more into her art, finding a freedom in it that she had never known before. Her work was being displayed in more galleries, and people were starting to take notice. The pieces she created told stories of vulnerability, strength, and self-discovery, and they resonated with those who saw them. It wasn't just about the paintings, it was about the woman who was finally becoming whole. But even as her art flourished, the call of her family never ceased. Her mother's words still echoed in her mind, reminding her of the life she had left behind. But this time, Sophia didn't let them pull her back. She stood firm. Then came a moment of clarity, the moment that would change everything. One evening, after an exhausting day, Jack and Sophia were sitting on the balcony of her apartment, watching the sunset. The city below was bathed in a soft golden light, and for a moment, everything felt still. Sophia turned to Jack, her eyes searching his. "I don't know what the future holds," she said, her voice soft but steady. "But I know that I'm finally ready to face it, whatever it may be, and I want you by my side." Jack looked at her, his heart swelling with emotion. He had watched her grow, watched her shed the layers of doubt and fear that had once held her back, and now she was standing tall, ready to embrace her future. "I'm here," he said, his voice full of love. "Wherever you go, whatever you do, I'm here with you." For the first time in her life, Sophia felt free to love, to create, and to build a life on her own terms. It wasn't going to be easy, and there would still be challenges ahead. Her family would always be a part of her, but they didn't define her. She had finally found her own voice, her own path, and with Jack by her side, she knew she could take on whatever came next. Together, they were ready to face the future, knowing that the life they were building was their own, a life filled with love, art, and the courage to follow their hearts. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions for Sophia and Jack. They had made it through the toughest parts of the journey. Sophia had finally taken ownership of her life, her dreams, and her art, but now it was time for the ultimate test. Her family, still unwilling to let go of their vision for her future, were calling her to one final meeting. It was going to be the moment of truth. Her mother, more persistent than ever, had insisted that she return to the family estate, that they would discuss her future in person. Sophia had been avoiding this moment for months, but now she knew it was time to face them head on. Jack could see the nervousness in her eyes as they stood outside the grand mansion, the towering gates looming in front of them like a symbol of the life she had just begun to step away from. "Are you sure about this?" Jack asked, his voice filled with concern. Sophia nodded, taking a deep breath. "I have to do this, Jack, for myself. I've made my decision, and I need them to see it." Jack gave her a reassuring smile, squeezing her hand. "No matter what happens in there, I'm with you. I always will be." Sophia smiled back at him, the uncertainty in her eyes replaced by a newfound strength. She wasn't just walking into that mansion as the heir to a fortune, she was walking in as herself, ready to fight for the life she wanted. The moment they entered the grand dining room, the silence was deafening. Her mother stood by the fireplace, her expression cold and unreadable. The tension in the room was palpable, and Sophia could feel the weight of her family's expectations pressing down on her. "Sophia, you finally decided to come home," her mother said, her tone laced with disappointment. "We need to talk about your future. You can't keep running away from your responsibilities." Sophia stood tall, her heart pounding, but her resolve stronger than ever. "I'm not running away, Mom," she said, her voice steady. "I'm choosing to live my own life. I'm choosing my art, my happiness, and my future." Her mother's face hardened. "Your art? Your happiness? That's not enough, Sophia. You were meant for so much more. You can't throw all of this away. The legacy, the power, the name we've worked our whole lives to build this, and you're just going to walk away from it all?" Sophia felt a pang of guilt, but she fought it back. She had heard these words for years, but now they didn't hold the same power over her. She was no longer the daughter who had to live up to their expectations. "It's not just about the name or the legacy," Sophia said, her voice calm but firm. "It's about me. It's about what I want. And what I want is to be free to create, to live, and to love without anyone telling me what I should be." Her mother's gaze softened for a moment, but the disappointment was still evident. "You'll regret this, Sophia," she said, her voice tinged with sadness. "You're throwing away everything we've built for you." Sophia shook her head, her heart heavy but resolute. "I'm not throwing anything away. I'm building something of my own." With that, she turned to Jack, who was standing by her side, unwavering in his support. "Let's go, Jack," she said, her voice filled with a quiet strength. They walked out of the mansion together, leaving behind a world that no longer fit them. As they walked down the grand staircase, Jack turned to her, a proud smile on his face. "You did it, Sophia. You stood up for yourself, and you'll never regret it." Sophia nodded, her eyes shining with determination. "I know. It's not going to be easy, but I'm ready for it. I'm ready to start living the life I've always wanted." Jack took her hand in his heart swelling with pride. "And I'll be right here with you, every step of the way. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together." With that, they stepped into the future, hand in hand, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Sophia had finally found the courage to choose her own path, to break free from the expectations of her family, and to embrace the life she was meant to live. And with Jack by her side, she knew that anything was possible. Months passed since that day, and Sophia's life, slowly but surely, transformed. The pressure from her family had not entirely disappeared, but it no longer held the same weight over her. She had found her place in the world, and it was a place she had built for herself, not one that was handed to her. Jack continued to be by her side, his support unwavering, and together they had built a life based on love, art, and authenticity. Sophia's work had become more than just a personal journey. It had resonated with others in a way she never imagined. Her art was featured in galleries across the city, each painting a reflection of the strength, vulnerability, and freedom she had come to embrace. But it wasn't just about the art anymore. It was about living her truth, without fear, without apology. One evening, as they sat together in their cozy apartment, a quiet sense of peace settled between them. Sophia had just finished her latest piece, a vibrant, abstract work that captured the very essence of her journey. She sat back, taking in the colors and shapes on the canvas. "This is it," she said softly, a smile tugging at her lips. "This is who I am." Jack looked over at her, his heart swelling with pride. "It's beautiful, Sophia, just like you." He paused for a moment, his gaze tender. "You've come so far. I'm so proud of you." Sophia felt a rush of warmth flood her chest. She had come so far, and it was hard to believe that the woman she was now was so different from the one who had stepped into this journey all those months ago. As she looked at Jack, the man who had been her rock, her confidant, and her love, she realized that everything she had gone through, every hardship, every tear, every moment of doubt, had led her to this life, to this love. "I couldn't have done it without you," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Jack reached out, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You didn't need me to do it, Sophia. You had it in you all along. I just helped you see it." She leaned into his touch, feeling more loved and understood than she had ever felt before. It was in this moment that Sophia realized she had truly found herself. It wasn't just about finding the courage to leave behind her family's expectations, or about finding success in her art. It was about finding peace within herself, about knowing that she was worthy of living a life that made her happy. The legacy her grandfather had left behind wasn't one of wealth or power. It was one of love and freedom. And now she was living that legacy in her own way, on her own terms. One evening, Jack took Sophia to a small, intimate art show where she was showcasing her latest collection. The room was filled with people admiring her work, and Sophia couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. She was finally here, standing in a room full of strangers who saw her for who she truly was. They weren't looking at her as the heiress to a fortune or as someone with a family legacy. They were looking at her as an artist, a creator, someone who had something valuable to offer the world. Jack stood beside her, his hand gently resting on her back, a silent support that spoke volumes. As the night wore on and the crowd began to thin out, Jack turned to her with a smile. "You've done it, Sophia. You've built something incredible." Sophia looked at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. "We've done it, Jack." Together, they shared a quiet moment, surrounded by her art, knowing that this was only the beginning. The future was open, full of endless possibilities, and they would face it together, side by side. Sophia had found her voice, her path, and the love of her life. And with that, she knew she was ready for whatever the next chapter held, because the life she was creating was one that was truly hers.